It's being called Hondurasgate, an alleged right-wing plot to overthrow leftist leaders in Latin America. The idea? To set up a platform to create and spread fake news against certain administrations, in some cases using state funds. Leaked audio recordings point to former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernández, Argentina's populist leader Javier Milei, and U.S. President Donald Trump as the main players involved in the plot. And these are their alleged targets: the administrations of Mexican leader Claudia Sheinbaum, the head of Brazil, Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, and Gustavo Petro, Colombia's president. For a bit of context, this is Hernández being sworn in for his second term as Honduran president in 2018. He and members of his family were subjects of a major drug trafficking investigation by U.S. prosecutors. Proceeds from drug sales were allegedly used to help elect him. And then in 2022, Hernández was arrested and extradited to the United States, where he was convicted and sentenced to 45 years in prison. President Donald Trump pardoned Hernández in 2025. Hernández was pardoned just days before an election in Honduras that brought the country's current president to power. Nasry Asfura, he is seen taking the oath of office in January. During the campaign, Trump publicly backed Asfura, saying U.S. financial aid to Honduras could be suspended if Asfura did not win and become president. Asfura was declared winner by a razor-thin margin after fraud allegations and a 3-week wait for official results. So let's listen to just one of the audio recordings to give you a taste of what this is all about. It's taken from an alleged conversation earlier this year between Asfura and Hernández. Let's have a listen to what Hernández had to say.
Vamos a montar una célula, presidente.
We're going to set up a cell, Mr. President. From here, from the US, an information cell, so they can't track us there in Honduras. It's going to be like a Latin American news site. I was on a call with President Javier Milei, and it was successful. Very, very good. And I think at this point, we can do great things for all of Latin America. There are some cases coming up against Mexico, Colombia, and most importantly, Honduras.
Contra Colombia y lo más importante contra Honduras.
Journalist Fritz Pinnow joins us from San Pedro Sula in Honduras. So there are a lot of moving parts here. Help our viewers understand what exactly are the allegations against Juan Orlando Hernández.
So Juan Orlando Hernández is currently allegedly kind of master planning and organizing a right-wing kind of process of like collusion and campaigns of disinformation and kind of supposedly rallying a lot of his right-wing allies into this coalition through which to also persecute and attack left-wing political enemies through disinformation and through different campaigns, even all the way to supposedly having a conversation with a former general about having political opponents disappeared. So that's currently what's on the table in these alleged voicemails.
These allegations rose after a series of tapes and audio recordings were leaked online. How exactly did investigators gain access to these recordings? Do we know?
And this is exactly why it's really hard currently to speak about this, because there's no information of how these were obtained. Allegedly, they were obtained from WhatsApp, Signal, and Telegrams. But there's no information on how that happened. There are about 37 audios that have been released, but between January and April of 2026. And on their page on Hondurasgate, on the official page of Hondurasgate, they were supposedly analyzed by Phonexia, which is a Czech company used by different law enforcement forensic teams in over 60 countries, they say. One of them is actually Germany. However, it is published in an outlet that is maybe 2 to 3 years old. It's not very well known. So it's kind of, the question there is, why publish something so groundbreaking with an outlet that's not very known and very new and very green in that sense? And it does say it was supported by a group of investigative journalists from Honduras, I'm here. I've asked my colleagues and everyone I basically know, how have you worked on this? And also some of the best well-known or best investigative journalists we have here in Honduras. Nobody's worked on this. Nobody knows who worked on this. There's no information of how this was obtained or who obtained it. And also on top of that, the text on the page there seems AI generated. So we don't really know a lot what's going on or we can't really verify this. So everybody's also being very careful about speaking about these allegations because we just don't know at this point.
All right. Now, the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, was allegedly one of the main targets of the disinformation network. This is how she responded. It's striking that Juan Orlando Hernández, who was detained and taken to the United States for drug trafficking, has been released, though his release was never fully understood. And then these audio recordings surface. So what exactly do you make of that statement from Sheinbaum?
Well, first of all, it's a bit ironic, right? That someone who's trying to make this really to resurge the war on drugs, basically like Trump, releases someone like Juan Orlando Hernández. And also Sheinbaum is being put under an enormous amount of pressure to persecute cartels by the United States, with always threatening to invade Mexico and basically do this themselves, right? So she obviously asks why did this happen, and basically when these audio recordings resurface, it gives kind of a piece of a puzzle that was unclear. Why would Trump do this? This is hurting his campaign.
So if these allegations are true, what exactly does Trump hope to achieve with his support for Hernández?
So Trump and Hernández go way back, especially because one has to really understand that the right wing in Honduras and mostly Central America is not right wing in a classical sense. They are more protecting or part of a right wing or more like an opportunistic oligarchical structure. And they would use basically any means to protect that structure. So Hernández has been extremely supportive of the US and has also included many and also basically passed many different policies that were in favor of the US rather than Honduras in order to protect his power basically and his base, right? And this oligarchy elitist structure. So basically by continuing to collaborate, what basically Trump tries to would achieve in these cases, allegedly, is that more policies in favor of the US, for example, the SEDES, which are special economic zones, which were declared unconstitutional, and other policies that were in favor of Trump and the right wing, the new right wing, basically.
So if I understand you correctly, we're seeing Trump attempting to expand his political influence in the region. But according to the Hondurasgate reports, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu helped secure Hernández's release. What more do we know about Netanyahu's alleged involvement in this scheme?
So supposedly, Benjamin Netanyahu was involved in the lobbying that led to Juan Orlando Hernández's release from U.S. prison. This is also a move that happened very quickly, very spontaneously, and which has also sparked a lot of outrage here in Honduras. This was right before the elections. This happened 3 days before the elections, with Trump announcing a pardon. And these alleged voicemails they alleged that Benjamin Netanyahu paid and kind of lobbied and coordinated the release of Juan Orlando Hernández. Juan Orlando Hernández did have during his presidency a very strong relationship with the Israelis, and also was using back then basically also surveillance systems and intelligence systems from Israel, for example, the Pegasus system, to listen to phone calls and intercept phones of political rivals, for example. So the relationship with Juan Orlando Hernández and Israel is there. And these voicemails allege an even deeper connection and a kind of lobbying for his release, though he was convicted of drug trafficking trafficking over about 500 tons to the US, basically.
All right, now let's take a look at the bigger picture here. We have Trump and Netanyahu allegedly conspiring with right-wing politicians in Latin America and targeting left-wing leaders. Why exactly are these allegations such a big deal?
They are a big deal because, on one hand, we are entering this age of a disinformation war, one could say. These voicemails could be disinformation, but also, if they're true, we're talking about a completely different type of war that the new right wing is waging, using disinformation as a weapon. So this is something completely new that we're having right now. But also, looking at these voicemails, it kind of seems we're slipping back into the 80s and the 90s, where people were very scared, basically, where left-wing politicians or any type of government opposition were hunted down, they were disappeared, or they were targeted. So this is kind of scooping back into that era, and the worry that we're having this resurgence of basically persecution of opposition.
Latin America has often been the target of disinformation campaigns. Is this a case of nothing new here, or is this a different kind of interference to what we've seen before?
This would be definitely a level up. This has, in this case, not really happened in that specific form. Disinformation is not new to the region. Also in Guatemala, for example, there are a lot of these troll farms or information farms where they actually have people pay to basically be online and basically troll their political opposition. And that is not new. But what is new is either if these voicemails are fake, that this level of, sophistication in developing this type of this level of disinformation, or if they are true, the type of collusion that is happening on the right wing, the Latin American right wing, backed, by the US and Israel, to create this coalition to develop disinformation. So we're at this new era of disinformation, and also people just have a hard time nowadays believing information. This is why it's so these voicemails are so controversial, because in the time of AI, we just don't know if this is real. We just can't tell. And we're so at the brink of this that we just don't know, can voices be developed like this in AI? They sound kind of weird. Well, it's also been tested with a system that uses AI, and that confirms that it's not AI. So it's just this uncertainty that's being currently developed, and it's going far beyond the classical disinformation campaigns that, for example, were used, like controlling television. Juan Orlando Hernández was famous for actually paying journalists back in his days to basically either not report on some corruption schemes, or to target his political opposition. This was all known back then. But using AI and using these type of tools, and with these tools present, disinformation has become a whole new monster that has to be tackled in this region, and that is not very known in this region yet.
And you've brought us right to my last question. Do you expect there to be any real-world consequences from these allegations and from Hondurasgate, as we've seen so far?
So currently, it's kind of dormant. Not even, well, some of the political opposition, some of the leftist opposition have talked about this. I'm very sure everyone's on the left, on the opposition, is on alert in the case that these are real, right? If they are real, and we're talking about it in hypothetical terms, we just, this would be a big issue that we're not doing something about this. But I think it is more of an alert, but everybody's still kind of waiting for a moment to, when will there be someone who can verify this, right? When will we know? And as soon as we know either it's real or it's not real, the reaction will be very different. So the journalists I've been talking to, my colleagues here in Honduras, many have basically a pre-written text that they answer to whatever email we receive, because we receive a lot of emails, also from organizations, from institutions, or experts that say, look, man, this is happening, we have to talk about this and so on and so on. And I think basically we all have a pre-written text of like, we have to wait first until we know more, right? So I think we don't really know what will happen. We know it did have an impact, that people are moving, that people are responding and reacting to this. But I think the biggest wave of reaction, of like the biggest kind of impact it will have, is as soon as we have a way to actually verify this, and that we can confidently say, especially us as journalists, confidently say, this is real or this is not real, right? And one way or the other, we know that we have a problem of disinformation here in the region, and that there's a new weapon out there, and that is AI, that can be used for disinformation.
That was journalist Fritz Pinnow in Honduras. Thank you very much for helping us find our way through this very complicated issue.
Thank you.
So what's your impression of Hondurasgate? Leave your comments below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. I'm Aaron Tilton. Thanks a lot for watching.